Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into one of the strangest, most absurd, and frankly disturbing chapters of American history, the Jim Crow system. Now, I know history can sometimes feel like a dusty old textbook, full of dates, laws, and names you can't pronounce. But trust me, Jim Crow wasn't just about laws. It was about an entire way of life, a bizarre, contradictory system that managed to be both cruel and ridiculous at the same time. So grab a seat, because we're about to break down how this system worked, the weirdest laws it produced, the human stories behind it, and why it still matters today. 1. What was Jim Crow? Let's start with the basics. Jim Crow wasn't an actual person, though there was a racist minstrel character by that name in the 1830s. The term came to represent the whole system of racial segregation that took root in the American South after Reconstruction, roughly from the 1870s to the 1960s. The logic was simple. Well, annoyed simple in a twisted way. Separate but equal, except it was never equal. White schools got brand new textbooks, black schools got hand-me-downs. White neighborhoods had paved roads, black neighborhoods often didn't. White hospitals got funding, black hospitals were starved. It was segregation baked into every aspect of life: education, transportation, housing, even prisons and cemeteries. And the kicker? It wasn't just the South. Jim Crow attitudes infected the entire country. 2. The absurd laws of Jim Crow. Now here's where things go from tragic to, you've got to be kidding me. Jim Crow laws weren't just oppressive, they were often laughably absurd. For example, in Mississippi, it was illegal for black and white people to share the same textbooks, because apparently math equations knew about race. In Birmingham, Alabama, there was a law forbidding black and white people from playing checkers together. That's right, even board games were segregated. Imagine sneaking into a basement for an illegal game of Connect 4. In Florida, it was illegal for white nurses to treat black male patients. Yes, public health was literally second to racial paranoia. And my personal favorite, in Atlanta, the law required black and white people to use different Bibles in court. That's right, even God had to be segregated. These laws tell us less about actual needs and more about the obsessive paranoia of white supremacy. If there was a possible way for races to interact, Jim Crow found a way to outlaw it. 3. Human stories from Jim Crow. Of course, these laws weren't just words on paper. Real people had to live under them. Take Ida B. Wells, a black journalist who risked her life exposing lynchings in the South. She lived in constant danger because she dared to report the truth. Or think of Rosa Parks, who we remember as simply the woman who wouldn't give up her bus seat. But that act of defiance wasn't random. Parks was part of a larger movement, and she was well aware that buses were one of the most humiliating daily symbols of Jim Crow. Black riders had to enter through the front, pay, then get off, and re-enter through the back door, often while the driver purposely drove away. And then there were countless everyday stories. A black man in the 1940s risked violence if he was seen looking a white woman in the eyes. Black children growing up knew that certain swings, theaters, or even beaches weren't for them. Imagine being a kid, wanting ice cream, and realizing there was a whole section of the store you weren't even allowed to step into. 4. The impact on society and culture. Jim Crow wasn't just about restrictions, it reshaped culture. For black Americans, it forced the creation of parallel institutions. Out of exclusion came historically black colleges and universities, thriving black churches, and even the Harlem Renaissance, a cultural explosion of art, music, and literature. For white Americans, Jim Crow reinforced a culture of superiority. Segregation wasn't just about separation, it was about control. It told white people, you are better. You belong in the front. You get the nice schools. And when that's reinforced every single day, it shapes entire generations. But here's the irony. Black culture flourished despite it all. Jazz, blues, gospel, literature,
all of it thrived, often influencing mainstream American culture in ways that couldn't be contained by segregation. Jim Crow wanted separation, but culture has a way of crossing lines.
5. Why it still matters today. So, what do we do with this history? First, we acknowledge it wasn't that long ago. Think about it. If you're in your 20s today, your grandparents or great-grandparents probably lived through Jim Crow. Second, we realize that laws may have changed, but legacies don't vanish overnight. Housing segregation, underfunded schools, racial profiling, many of these are the long shadows of Jim Crow. And finally, we learn from the absurdity. Jim Crow wasn't just about oppression. It was about how ridiculous human beings can get when fear and prejudice rule the day. When you're banning people from playing checkers together, you're not just being oppressive, you're being absurd. So maybe the lesson is, laugh at the absurdity, yes, but also recognize the cruelty behind it. Because the real joke was that people thought this system could last forever. Spoiler alert, it didn't. That was the world of Jim Crow. Brutal, strange, sometimes so absurd it feels like satire, but very real for the people who lived through it. If you found this video insightful, give it a like, share it with your friends, and let me know in the comments, which Jim Crow law shocked you the most? Was it the segregated Bibles, the illegal checkers, or something else? Thanks for watching, and remember, history isn't just about the past, it's about the stories we carry forward. See you next time.